Well, this Trump White House had called the Iran nuclear deal horrible. Kimberly Halkett examines now how we got here.
The United States says Iran is a threat, and it wants to punish the country's government by isolating it from the global financial system. Starting Tuesday, U.S. sanctions will be reimposed to target a range of sectors, blocking Iran from purchasing U.S. banknotes and trading in gold and metals like aluminum and steel. It will also limit Iran's access to software and automotive sectors, while blocking its ability to purchase commercial aircraft or trade in food and other goods.
This horrible one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made.
The snapback sanctions are part of a promise made by U.S. President Donald Trump when he drew the United States in May from the 2015 agreement known as the JCPOA. Close U.S. allies like France's President Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel remain committed to the agreement aimed at limiting Tehran's nuclear program. But the U.S. argues it didn't work, as it didn't go far enough. The U.S. also argues the profits made from the lifting of sanctions being used to purchase and export weapons in places like Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza to support proxy militias and the state financing of terrorism. The sanctions come as protests continue in Iran against deteriorating economic conditions, but the United States denies the sanctions aimed to force regime change. Instead, it says it hopes to modify the Iranian government's behavior. Despite long-standing U.S. policy of no formal diplomatic relations with Iran, President Donald Trump has even indicated he's willing to sit down for talks with Iran's leaders.
No preconditions. No, they want to meet, I'll meet. Anytime they want.
Heightening tensions, top European foreign policy chiefs are implementing something called a blocking statute. In fact, EU firms still intent on doing business with Iran, in spite of the U.S. sanctions, prompting this stern warning from a senior Republican senator.
To my European friends, under these sanctions, you have to pick between the American economy and the Iranian economy. You can no longer do business with them. Choose wisely.
These snapback sanctions are also just the beginning. In 90 days, another round of even more punishing sanctions targeting Iran's massive oil industry will come into effect.
Sector and foreign banks that do business with Iran. Our correspondent Zain Basravi joins us live now from Tehran. Zain, Mr. Rouhani was on TV there last night. What was his central message?
Well, President Hassan Rouhani spent the initial part of his television appearance talking about the United States, about Donald Trump, and really repeating what's already been said in this very standing stalemate between the two countries. What was very interesting is that he spent the bulk of his time, it was almost 2 hours, discussing domestic issues and speaking directly to the Iranian people. Now, this nuclear deal, as it's continued to fall apart, has made President Hassan Rouhani's government incredibly unpopular. The policy has become almost toxic in Iran because Rouhani really married himself to this deal, negotiating it, seeing it through, and he sold it as for all of the country's economic problems. And when that didn't manifest, when Iranians weren't doing better than they were before the deal, when Donald Trump started to weigh at the deal and eventually try to break it down, that made President Hassan Rouhani very unpopular for not seeing it coming. So he spent this speech appealing to the Iranian people, saying he didn't care about his popularity at one point, acknowledging that, yes, he does recognize the fact that he's become very unpopular among many parts of Iranian society. And he said what was important was to deliver services to the people, to which his critics would say that that isn't happening. He also appealed to Iranians for a little more patience, a little more calm, and he said that only standing together would they be able to upend any of the economic pressure that the United States is putting on them. And he said that he is introducing new fiscal policies, new subsidies for those most vulnerable in the society. And he said that things will get better. He pointed to the European Union and to their assistance and to continue trade with them. And he said that there is going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. And so much of his time was dedicated appealing directly to the Iranian people. One interesting part is that he thanked those who are struggling financially but not coming out to protest, signaling his discontent with what we've seen is a week's worth of evening demonstrations against the government, calling for a change to the government's economic team and more drastic measures to help.
And also, does he feel cornered by the timeline? Because presumably his popularity might dip even more once the sanctions really kick in come November.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a squeeze leading up to today, to the August deadline for sanctions. So it was a ticking clock, and now yet another clock has been set, looking forward to November. And it is nothing small to say that, yes, the president of Iran does feel cornered. In the days leading up to this, we had the head of the Revolutionary Guard Corps says something. It's no small thing. We've also seen for the first time that this president has been summoned by members of parliament to appear in parliament and answer questions with regards to the economy. Now, President Hassan Rouhani has appeared in parliament in the past voluntarily, but this time he's been summoned. And he talked about that yesterday, saying that he wished that the timing were better. He wished that parliamentarians were a little more friendly towards him. So he's certainly not happy about having to go, but he said he will, and he will answer questions. And it also happens that this parliament, at the same time that they summoned him, began impeachment proceedings against one of the members of Rouhani's federal cabinet, the Minister of Labor and Social Welfare. So certainly, in between now and November, President Hassan Rouhani has a lot of work to do, not just to deal with what's happening on the international stage, but to shore up support for his presidency here domestically.
An Israeli airstrike on the Gaza has killed 2 members of Hamas and wounded others. Those killed were reportedly members of the Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas. The Israeli army says it retaliated against gunfire aimed at its troops. Rescue teams have yet to make it to some parts of the Indonesian island of Lombok as the search goes on for survivors from Sunday's earthquake. At least 200,000 people have had their homes destroyed or damaged. The destruction of roads and bridges means it's proving difficult for emergency crews to get around. The magnitude 6.9 quake has killed nearly 100 people, but many more have been trapped under the rubble.
We might still be in trauma after 3 to 6 months. I don't think it will be easy to return to normal life. We need to do it slowly because we're really traumatized. We dare not sleep indoors. What's our plan for the future? We don't know.
But there have been some stories of survival. 2 people have been pulled out of the rubble alive. One man was trapped under a mosque that collapsed on Sunday. He was found after rescue workers used heavy machinery to clear the debris.
I'm at a shop right now. It's a big store where a couple was buried under the rubble. The wife is already it's on safer ground. But let me show you what they're doing right now, because you can see that the rescue workers don't really have the appropriate equipment to do these rescue missions. You can see that they're basically digging with their bare hands. They're using some kind of sticks. They're using a drill, but they don't really have any really serious heavy equipment. There's only very little of that available on the island, and it's used elsewhere right now. There's another mosque where around 20 people seem to have been buried, trapped under the rubble. That's also where this man was rescued yesterday. That's where the heavy equipment is at right now. But here, it's just manual, basically. And from the smell of the location where I am now, we can actually conclude that